Hey everybody, Jason here, and I'm back with another quick video for you guys today. I always struggle when I'm making like these how-to videos and setup videos, specifically because I have a pretty short attention span, and so I really don't want to make them too long. But with that said, there's a lot to say and there's a lot to discuss. So I guess let's just jump right into it. Nothing is more fun than going out onto the track with a car that just handles flawlessly. Tons of rear grip, tons of steering, soaks up all the bumps, lands off these big jumps like it's just floating down onto pillows. I mean, when your car is perfect, there's no better feeling when you're out there racing and having fun with your friends. But the flip side to that coin is that it sucks when your car won't do what you want it to do, and it won't do it reliably, won't do it consistency. And so one of the big pieces to this puzzle is steering. And I cannot tell you how many times I've literally seen guys take their car out on the track and they'll ask me to drive it, and then right away the car just doesn't steer evenly from left to right. And a big part of this, there are really different components. There are kind of steps that need to be followed in a specific order to kind of achieve the result you're looking for. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Basically getting your car to steer consistently and evenly from left to right. First things first, when you're setting up your car, you really need to pay close attention to the manual, specifically when you're installing the steering servo, because not every car is designed with the same style of steering geometry. And so for instance, on a TLR car, you'll see here in this diagram that the servo horn is actually offset. It doesn't stay perfectly vertical or perpendicular to the chassis. It actually has a slight incline. But if we look at this picture of a B6 steering servo, you'll see that it is perfectly vertical. And this is just one small component that engineers take into consideration when designing steering geometry for their cars. If you look at other cars like the older Yokomo two-wheel buggy, it uses a really long servo horn. And so if you were to try to install a servo horn from, say, a Losi or an associated buggy onto the older Yokomo cars, it just won't get the job done. There just isn't enough sweep. There isn't a big enough radius to kind of engage the whole steering rack. So all of these things are important. So with that said, you need to look really carefully at your manual to see exactly how your steering servo and servo horn should be installed. And the lengths that they give you for the links in the manual, they're critical. It's critical that you get those right. So at the very least, you can use something like this, something like just a basic scale or a ruler to kind of get yourself closer in the ballpark. But what you really want is something like this. You really want an inexpensive digital caliper. It literally will save you so much time and headache when getting everything set up. And it's really important that when you're building a car, at least for the first time to the box setup, to use the link lengths that they provide in the manual. And the reason for this is that you literally could end up with a car that steers far more to one direction than the other for any number of reasons, because the servo horn is off a spline on the servo, because the link is too long or too short that actually connects the servo horn to the actual steering rack, and then of course the steering links out to the wheels. So it's really important to pay close attention to that. Once you have all of that stuff measured up and it's all accurate and you're confident in what you have, then it's time to actually set the EPA, and that stands for Endpoint Adjustment on your radio. And the first thing you're going to want to do is just kind of trim the car semi-straight by eye. Just kind of eyeball it. And then you'll go ahead and you'll turn the wheel all the way to the right, and you'll turn your EPA up. You'll turn your EPA up until you reach full lock, and then maybe an extra point or two. And really one of the litmus tests, like one of the tests that I always look for is, does that inside wheel, does it lock out? When the wheel is all the way turned, like this, can you go in here and is this wheel locked? So let me see if I can, my servo's starting to lose center. Let me see if I can hold this up for you guys and show you what I'm talking about. You can see that it's locked out. So now when we put the car down, what you really want to do is make sure that you're getting full travel when the car is sitting in its appropriate ride height position. So I'm not going to drop it because we got the microphone, it'll make noise, but you can see that the car's down, it's been down, it still locks all the way out in both directions, and that's exactly what we want. There are some cars that if you try to set the EPAs when the car's like this and everything is at full droop, the steering knuckles will actually run into the arms, and so there's actually they will actually limit the travel. Then when you put the car down, it won't actually have full travel because it was set when it was in the air. So it's really important to consider two things. One, you really want to set your endpoints when the car is at ride height. And a lot of times, if you don't have a really strong servo, just the friction from the wheels sitting on the surface can kind of inhibit the buggy's ability from getting all the way to the lock. So the best way really to do it is to maybe set it in the air with the arms compressed slightly. Something kind of like pick the buggy up, compress the arms slightly, make sure that it's getting full travel, and then set it down and make sure that with friction and with resistance, you're actually getting full travel on your radio. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There are a lot of other features we're going to talk about here in the future. Things like dual rate, sub trim, trimming the car straight. But so many radios are so very different. As long as your servo horn is installed in the appropriate position and location on your servo, the link that connects the servo horn to the steering rack is the appropriate length. Then of course your steering links are the correct lengths. You should have a car that steers very evenly from left to right and is very linear. See, there's a lot of stuff going on that people don't really realize. At least I didn't realize for a long time until I really started to pay close attention. There were a few different times when I would actually go drive people's cars, and their cars would actually make it all the way to full lock, but the cars still weren't steering evenly from left to right. There are a lot of things that can influence this. You could have a bent shock shaft, you could have any one of the suspension components could have some bind in it, you could have a bad bearing. There are a lot of things that can make the car act goofy, but a big thing that people don't realize is that when you have a servo, let's just pretend that this is your actual servo horn and it's riding on your servo, and of course it has 180 degrees of rotation. There's a pretty interesting relationship that happens between the ball stud that connects the link to the steering rack and the servo horn. Basically, if you just take your ball stud and you were to say it's right here on the top, and you were just to project the travel of the ball stud onto an X-plane, that's it. Well, when this goes to about 45 degrees, you have almost a one-to-one travel between the servo horn and the steering rack. You see, but when this thing gets past 45 degrees and it starts to come down, there's barely any movement there. It's because of this basic concept of the radius, these arcs that all of these components are traveling on. Keep in mind, your steering rack, it's traveling on its own arc in this direction here. Your servo horn is traveling on its own arc. And the interactions of these arcs, they play a really big role in how your car behaves. And not just the fact that it gets to its lockout point, but how it gets to its lockout point. So there's a ton more that can be discussed in steering, but I hope this short video kind of laid some of the groundwork of the foundation to kind of motivate you to be really particular, really careful, and measure everything out to ensure that your car steers evenly from left to right, thus creating a better race experience. So hope this wasn't too nerded out of a video for you guys. I really wasn't exactly sure how to explain this. I had played around in Adobe After Effects and we thought about doing some animations. But I think the concept it's a relatively simple concept. It's just kind of overlooked by a lot of people. So anyways, hope you enjoyed watching this video just as much as I enjoyed making it. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Oh yeah, before you go, I thought I'd tell you that one of the things I always do when I'm at the track is I'll actually drive the car up against one of the pipes, and then I'll drive it right to the edge of the pipe, and then I'll do a circle, a left-handed circle, and I'll go out there and mark it with a quarter or a piece of dirt or anything that's on the track. And then I'll take the car and I'll go the other way and I'll line it up facing the other direction and I'll turn right. And what I'm really looking for in those moments, I'm just looking to make sure that the steering radius is even from left to right. And that's a nice little, it's a nice little way to make sure that the car's steering evenly. And this can be done anywhere. You don't have to do it on your track. You can do it out in front of your house. Just use the curb or use a line in the road or whatever. So just a little tip that I use to make sure that my cars steer evenly from left to right. Bye guys.